I always believed that if a mother loves deeply enough, her child will grow into a grateful adult. But life taught me that love doesn't guarantee loyalty, and sometimes the most painful betrayals come from those we've sacrificed everything for. I never thought my only daughter would take my retirement savings, then call me a burden when I needed help. But that's exactly what happened, and the one phone call I made changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning light filtered through my kitchen window as I stirred my tea, watching steam rise in delicate curls. At 68, I had settled into a quiet rhythm since retiring from 35 years of teaching English literature at Oakridge High. My husband Daniel had been gone for 5 years now, his absence still a tender spot in my daily routine, but I had adapted, finding joy in small pleasures: my garden, my books, my golden retriever Rusty, who dozed peacefully at my feet. The phone rang, shattering my peaceful morning ritual. I recognized the ringtone immediately. My daughter Olivia. "Mom, it's me," she said, her voice tight with that familiar urgency that always preceded a request. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course, sweetheart. Is everything all right?" I cradled the phone between my ear and shoulder, already moving toward my desk where I kept my checkbook. "Ryan and I found the perfect investment opportunity," she explained, words tumbling out in excited bursts. "It's this amazing property development in Portland. The returns are guaranteed. We're talking double our investment within 18 months. My heart sank. This wasn't the first time. Since Olivia married Ryan Parker 6 years ago, these perfect opportunities had become increasingly frequent. Sometimes it was a startup company, other times a real estate venture. The pattern was always the same: initial excitement, urgent need for capital, promises of remarkable returns, and then silence. "How much are you thinking?" I asked, already knowing I would say yes. 200,000. She paused, then rushed on before I could respond. "I know it sounds like a lot, but Mom, this is different. Ryan's been working with these developers for months. It's absolutely solid. $200,000, nearly half of what remained, in my retirement account after helping them with the down payment on their house, Olivia's MBA, and 3 previous can't-miss investments. Daniel and I had saved carefully for decades, living modestly to ensure our golden years would be comfortable. Now it was just me, and my safety net was growing thinner. "Mom, are you still there?" "Yes, honey, I'm here." I took a deep breath. "That's a significant amount." "I know, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. But this could set us up for life, and then we can take care of you." Her voice softened. "Please, Mom. You know I wouldn't ask if I wasn't certain." There, it was, the promise that had kept me saying yes for years. The belief that eventually my sacrifices would create security not just for Olivia, but for all of us. That one day, the flow of support would reverse. "Let me think about it," I said, although we both knew what my answer would be. It had always been yes. From the moment I first held her in my arms, I had never been able to deny her anything. 3 days later, I transferred the money from my retirement account to Olivia's. The withdrawal penalties were steep, leaving me with just over $235,000 for the rest of my life. But I told myself it was worth it. I had always lived simply. I could continue to do so. When I called to tell her the money had been transferred, Olivia was effusive. "You're the best, Mom. I promise you won't regret this. We'll have you over for dinner this weekend to celebrate, okay?" But the dinner invitation was postponed, then forgotten. Weeks passed with minimal contact, just brief text messages when I reached out first. This, too, was part of the pattern. Once the money was secured, Olivia and Ryan became scarce until the next need arose. My friend Maggie noticed my quietness during our weekly lunch at the Old Mill Cafe. "You gave them more money, didn't you?" she asked directly, setting down her fork. I nodded, staring into my barely touched soup. "Martha, you can't keep doing this. What happens when there's nothing left?" "They're my family, Maggie. What else am I supposed to do?" Maggie reached across the table and took my hand. "Family works both ways. When was the last time Olivia asked how you were doing? When? Did she last offer help instead of asking for it?" I had no answer. The truth was, our relationship had become increasingly one-sided. My calls went to voicemail. Invitations to Sunday dinners were met with excuses. Yet still, I kept giving. Money, understanding, forgiveness. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? 3 months after the investment transfer, I woke up disoriented, my left arm numb and my speech slurred. My neighbor found me when Rusty's persistent barking alerted her that something was wrong. I had suffered a mild stroke. The hospital stay was brief but frightening. The doctors were clear. I needed to reduce stress, take medication regularly, and have someone check on me during the first few weeks at home. Simple tasks had become challenging. Cooking, driving, even managing my medications required assistance. "Is there family who can help?" the discharge nurse asked kindly as she reviewed my aftercare instructions. "My daughter," I said with confidence. "She'll help." When I called Olivia from the hospital, her initial reaction seemed appropriate. Shock, concern, promises to come right away. But as the discharge date approached, excuses began. An important client meeting, Ryan's business trip, their house renovation. "Can't you hire someone, Mom? Just for a few weeks until you're back on your feet?" "The doctor recommended family," I explained, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "And my insurance won't cover in-home care for this type of recovery." "What about your friend Maggie? Can't she help?" "She's visiting her daughter in Arizona. She'll be gone for a month." Olivia sighed heavily. "I just don't know how we can manage this right now. We're in the middle of so many things." Something in her tone made me pause. This wasn't just inconvenience. There was resentment, as if my illness was an inconsiderate interruption of her life. "I wouldn't ask if I had other options, Olivia." I know. It's just difficult timing." Eventually, she agreed to pick me up from the hospital and stay for the weekend to get me settled. I felt pathetically grateful for even this meager accommodation. The ride home was tense. Olivia kept checking her watch, making business calls while I sat quietly beside her. When we arrived at my house, she helped me to the sofa, then immediately began making lists of things I would need. "I'll stock your fridge and set up your medications, but I really can only stay until tomorrow afternoon. I have a presentation Monday I can't miss." I nodded, too tired to argue. "Thank you for coming at all." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That evening, while Olivia thought I was napping, I overheard her phone conversation with Ryan in the kitchen. "It's worse than I thought," she whispered harshly. "She can barely manage on her own, and the house is a mess. This could go on for months." A pause as Ryan responded. "I know, but what was I supposed to do? She's got hardly anyone else." "No, she can't come stay with us. Can you imagine? We'd never have a moment's peace." Another pause. "The irony is she just gave us that money, and now she needs constant care. If we'd known this was coming, we could have set some aside to hire help." My blood turned to ice. In the space of that conversation, I had transformed from mother to burden, an inconvenient responsibility they wished they could outsource. "Maybe we should look into those assisted living places," Olivia continued. "Some of them take Medicare or whatever." I couldn't bear to hear more. I rustled the throw blanket deliberately, announcing my wakefulness. Olivia appeared in the doorway immediately, her face arranged into a mask of concern that I now recognized as entirely artificial. "Hey, Mom, feeling any better? Can I get you anything?" I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, accomplished daughter for whom I would have done anything, and saw a stranger. "No, thank you. I'm fine." That night, as Olivia slept in the guest room, I lay awake wondering how we had arrived here. How the child I had poured my heart and soul into could speak of me with such callous detachment. Perhaps I had failed her in some fundamental way. Or perhaps I had succeeded too well, raising a woman so self-sufficient she saw no value in reciprocity. The next morning, Olivia organized my medications in labeled containers and filled the refrigerator with pre-made meals. She called a neighbor to check on me periodically and programmed emergency numbers into my phone. All practical, responsible actions performed with the efficiency of someone completing a tedious work assignment. "I've done everything I can to set you up for success," she said, already gathering her things to leave. "I really think you should consider some professional help, Mom. Your recovery could take a while, and Ryan and I just don't have the bandwidth right now." Bandwidth. Such a clinical word for filial duty. "I understand," I said quietly. "You have your own life." She looked relieved that I wasn't going to make this difficult. "Exactly. And we're just entering a critical phase with this investment. If it pays off the way we expect, maybe we can revisit the conversation then." As she headed for the door, I found myself asking, "Was there ever a real investment, Olivia? Or was that just another way to access my savings?" She froze, then turned slowly, her expression hardening. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I'm just wondering. There have been so many perfect opportunities over the years, so many promises of returns that never materialized." "That's business, Mom. Not everything pans out, but this one will, if we're allowed to focus on it without distractions." Distractions. That's what I had become. "Of course," I murmured. "I wouldn't want to distract you from your success." After Olivia left, the house felt emptier than it ever had, even in the years since Daniel passed. Rusty sensed my despair, resting his graying muzzle on my lap as tears slipped silently down my cheeks. That afternoon, as I struggled to open my medication bottles with fingers that wouldn't quite cooperate, the stark reality of my situation became clear. I had given everything: my savings, my unconditional support, my unwavering belief, to someone who saw me as nothing more than an obligation, and an unwelcome one at that. I had spent decades teaching literature to teenagers, helping them understand the complex motivations of characters in classic novels. Yet somehow, I had failed to recognize the plot developing in my own life. The gradual erosion of a relationship until nothing remained but expectation on one side and resentment on the other. As darkness fell, I made a decision. If I was truly alone in this world, except for a daughter who saw me as a burden, then I needed to rebuild my life on new foundations. I could no longer afford the luxury of one-sided love. With trembling fingers, I reached for my phone and made the one call that would change everything. That night, I dialed a number I hadn't used in months. After 3 rings, a warm, steady voice answered. "Hello? Tom, it's Martha Kennedy." "Martha, what a surprise. It's been ages. How are you?" Thomas Callahan had been my colleague at Oakridge High School for over 20 years before he'd retired from teaching biology to pursue his medical degree. Now a retired physician, he volunteered at the community health clinic 3 days a week and ran the community garden project at Riverside Park. We'd developed a comfortable friendship over faculty lunches and school events, and after Daniel passed, Tom had checked on me regularly, bringing homemade soup and offering to help with household repairs. But when Olivia had made cutting remarks about that old man hanging around too much, I'd gradually let the connection fade, not wanting to create tension with my daughter. I've had better days, Tom, I admitted, my voice wavering slightly. What's happened? Are you all right? His concern was immediate and genuine. I hesitated, pride making it difficult to voice my situation. I had a mild stroke 3 days ago. Nothing too serious, but I'm having some difficulty managing on my own right now. Good God, Martha, why didn't you call sooner? Where are you? Now? Still at the hospital? No, I'm home. Olivia brought me back yesterday, but she had to leave. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Tom had always been perceptive about my relationship with Olivia, offering gentle observations that I'd stubbornly ignored. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said firmly. You don't need to. I do need to. And I want to. 20 minutes. Don't argue with me, Martha Kennedy. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of relief. Thank you, Tom. True to his word, Tom arrived precisely 20 minutes later, carrying 2 canvas bags of groceries and a medical bag. Rusty greeted him with enthusiastic tail wagging, recognizing an old friend. Well, hello to you too, old fellow, Tom said, scratching behind Rusty's ears before turning his attention to me. His eyes softened with concern as he took in my appearance. You look exhausted, Martha. It's been a difficult few days, I admitted. Let's get you comfortable, and then we'll talk. Tom moved through my house with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to crisis management. He prepared a light dinner, organized my medications more effectively than Olivia had, and performed a basic neurological assessment, his touch professional but gentle. Your recovery is going well, he said, but you shouldn't be alone yet. Your blood pressure is still elevated, and those fine motor skills need monitoring. I sat at my kitchen table, watching as he put away the groceries he'd brought. There was something deeply comforting about his presence. No drama, no reluctance, just calm competence. I don't want to impose, I said quietly. Tom turned from the refrigerator, his expression stern but kind. Martha, in all the years I've known you, you've never imposed on anyone. If anything, you've let people impose on you far too often. He poured us both tea and sat across from me. Now, tell me everything. And so I did. I told him about the stroke, about Olivia's brief visit, and the conversation I'd overheard. I even admitted what I'd been hiding from everyone. How much money I'd given Olivia and Ryan over the years, and how little I had left. Tom listened without interruption, his weathered face revealing nothing but attentive concern. When I finished, he simply nodded. I suspected as much. Not the stroke, of course, but the situation with Olivia. Was it that obvious to everyone? But me? Only to those who care about you enough to pay attention. He took a sip of his tea. What do you need right now, Martha? Not what you think you should want, or what would inconvenience others the least. What do you actually need? The question caught me off guard. For so long, I'd filtered my needs through the lens of others' convenience. What would be easiest? For Olivia? What would cause the least disruption? What could I manage on my own to avoid being a burden? I need help, I said finally, the admission like a weight lifting. At least for a few weeks. I need someone to check on me, help with some daily tasks while I regain my strength. Tom nodded. I can do that. And we can arrange for others to fill in when I have clinic duties. Others? Martha, you've lived in this community for 40 years. You taught generations of kids, volunteered at the library, organized the annual book drive. Did you think nobody would step up if they knew you needed help? I felt a flush of shame. I didn't want to be a bother. That's the difference between you and Olivia, Tom said gently. You worry about bothering others, while she seems to consider it her birthright. The observation stung with its accuracy. She wasn't always like this, I said defensively, though even as the words left my mouth, I wondered if that were true. Had Olivia always been self-centered, and I'd simply refused to see it? Or had my enabling created this version of my daughter? People reveal themselves in crisis, Tom said. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'll stay in your guest room tonight. Tomorrow we'll set up a schedule with some of your former colleagues and neighbors. You focus on getting better, and we'll handle the rest. I can't ask people to— You're not asking. I'm organizing. Big difference. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Just say thank you, Martha. The laugh that bubbled up surprised me. Thank you, Tom. That night, for the first time since my stroke, I slept deeply and without anxiety. The knowledge that someone was under my roof who genuinely cared about my well-being provided a comfort I hadn't realized I was missing. The next morning, I awoke to the scent of coffee and something delicious baking. I made my way cautiously to the kitchen to find Tom at the stove, Rusty sitting attentively at his feet. Ah, you're up. Perfect timing. The quiche is just about ready. You didn't have to cook breakfast, I said, settling into a chair. I know. I wanted to. He placed a slice of spinach quiche in front of me. Protein, vegetables, and comfort food all in one. Doctor approved. As we ate, Tom outlined his plan. He'd already called 4 of our former colleagues who were eager to help. They would rotate, checking in on me, bringing meals, and assisting with errands. Tom would stay for the first week, then transition to daily visits. People want to help, Martha. You just need to let them. His matter-of-fact kindness nearly brought me to tears. For so long, I'd convinced myself that Olivia was my only family, my only real connection. Now I was confronted with evidence to the contrary, a network of people willing to step in without hesitation, without conditions, without resentment. The next few days established a new rhythm. Tom stayed in my guest room, working on his laptop during the day and sharing meals with me in the evening. Other helpers began to arrive. Margaret from the English department brought homemade soup and stayed to grade papers while I rested. John, the retired principal, drove me to a follow-up doctor's appointment. Lisa, my former student who now owned the local bookshop, brought new releases she thought I'd enjoy and read aloud when my eyes tired. Each act of kindness loosened something that had been tightly wound inside me. I began to see that I wasn't alone, that my value wasn't measured by what I could provide to Olivia, but by the connections I'd built throughout my life. Olivia called only once that week, her voice businesslike. Just checking in, Mom. How are you managing? I'm doing well, actually. Tom Callahan is staying with me and several friends have been helping out. A pause. Tom Callahan? Your old colleague? Why is he staying at your house? Because I needed help, and he offered. I kept my tone neutral, though I could feel an unfamiliar edge wanting to creep in. You could have called me if things were that bad, she said, a note of indignation in her voice. Could I? The question hung between us. Of course, she insisted, though we both knew it wasn't true. Anyway, I'm glad you have help. We're swamped with the development project. The investors need constant updates. I understand. You focus on your work. Thanks for understanding, Mom. That's why you're the best. After we hung up, I sat quietly, processing the conversation. There had been no real concern in her voice, no offer to visit, just relief that someone else had taken on the responsibility. And for the first time, that realization didn't devastate me. Instead, I felt a strange sense of clarity, as if a fog had lifted. Tom found me on the back porch, staring out at my neglected garden. Everything all right? Olivia called. She's glad I have help because she's too busy to provide it. He sat beside me. And how do you feel about that? Oddly liberated, I admitted. It's as if I've been given permission to see things as they really are, not as I wished they were. 10 days after my stroke, I received an unexpected visitor. Ryan, Olivia's husband, arrived unannounced, his expensive SUV gleaming in my driveway. Tom, who had just returned from his clinic duties, answered the door. "I'm here to see Martha," I heard Ryan say, his tone suggesting Tom was some sort of gatekeeper. "Come in," Tom replied simply. "She's in the sunroom." Ryan entered with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding attention. At 44, he was handsome in a polished way. Designer clothes, carefully styled hair, the kind of tan that came from leisure rather than labor. He'd always treated me with a surface charm that never quite reached his eyes. "Martha, you're looking better than I expected," he said, settling into a chair opposite me. Olivia was worried. "Was she?" I kept my voice mild. "It's been nearly 2 weeks since I've heard from her." Ryan waved his hand dismissively. "You know how she gets when she's in project mode. Single-minded focus. It's what makes her so successful." Tom quietly excused himself, giving us privacy while remaining within earshot in the kitchen. Ryan watched him go with narrowed eyes. "So you've got yourself a live-in caretaker now? Cozy arrangement?" The insinuation was deliberately provocative. In the past, I would have rushed to explain, to justify. Now, I simply regarded him steadily. "Tom is a friend helping during my recovery. Why are you here, Ryan?" He leaned forward, switching to his business demeanor. "Olivia and I have been talking. We think it might be time for you to consider downsizing. This house is too much for you to manage, especially now." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "It makes sense, Martha. You're living alone in a 3-bedroom house with stairs and a large yard. After this health scare, wouldn't you feel safer in a place designed for seniors? There are some excellent communities in Portland." "And what would happen to this house?" Ryan shrugged, trying to appear casual, though his eyes were calculating. "We could help you sell it. The market in Oakridge is hot right now, especially for established properties in good school districts. You could use the proceeds for your care facility and have a nice cushion besides." "I see." I took a slow sip of my tea. "And would you be handling the sale?" "It would make sense. My company specializes in these types of properties. We'd waive most of our fees, of course." Of course. Ryan's real estate development company would stand to make a handsome commission, and they'd gain control of a valuable property in a desirable neighborhood. I wondered if they already had buyers or development plans in mind. "This is quite sudden," I observed. "I haven't even completed my recovery yet." "It's never too early to plan ahead," Ryan pressed. "And frankly, Martha, Olivia is worried about your finances. You've been very generous with us, and we're concerned about your long-term security." The irony was so thick it nearly choked me. After taking half my retirement savings, they were suddenly concerned about my financial security. How thoughtful. Did Olivia mention that the last withdrawal to help with your investment opportunity left me with just over $200,000 for the rest of my life? Ryan had the grace to look momentarily discomfited, but recovered quickly. "All the more reason to liquidate this asset. You're sitting on at least $500,000 in equity." "And the investment? How is that progressing?" He shifted slightly. "These things take time. The development phase is always the most capital-intensive with the least visible progress." "I see." I set down my cup carefully. "Well, Ryan, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not interested in selling my home or moving to a care facility. I'm recovering well, and I have a support system here in Oakridge that I value." His expression hardened. "Don't you think you're being short-sighted? What happens when the next medical issue arises? Will you expect Olivia to drop everything again?" "I haven't expected Olivia to do anything," I said quietly. "In fact, I've asked very little of her in comparison to what she's asked of me." Ryan stood abruptly. "We're trying to help you, Martha. Olivia is stressed enough without having to worry about you living alone in this big house, falling downstairs or whatever. Please thank Olivia for her concern. You can tell her I'm doing fine." Ryan's jaw tightened. I'll tell her you're being stubborn. She won't be happy about this. After he left, Tom returned to the sunroom, his expression carefully neutral. That was illuminating, he said. It certainly was. I looked out at my garden where spring shoots were beginning to emerge despite months of neglect. They want my house, Tom. So it seems. What I don't understand is why now. They have their own home. They've never shown interest in mine, before. Tom sat beside me. Real estate development is Ryan's business. Maybe he sees an opportunity in your neighborhood. Or perhaps they need the money from selling your house to cover losses from their supposed investment. I considered this. You think the investment might not be real? I think people who are genuinely concerned about your well-being don't try to move you out of your home while you're still recovering from a stroke. He patted my hand. Just be careful, Martha. Watch your accounts, and maybe it's time to review your will and other legal documents. His words sent a chill through me. I had always assumed Olivia's financial requests were legitimate, if poorly planned. The idea that there might be deliberate deception was almost too painful to contemplate. Yet I couldn't dismiss the possibility, especially after Ryan's transparent attempt to gain control of my house. That afternoon, I called my bank and discovered something disturbing. There had been 3 attempted withdrawals from my account. In the past week, all denied due to incorrect password attempts. Someone had been trying to access my money. The bank representative helped me change all my security information and put additional protections on my accounts. As I hung up, I felt a hollow ache in my chest. Not just betrayal, but calculated exploitation from my own daughter. It's worse than we thought, I told Tom that evening. Someone tried to access my accounts multiple times last week. His expression was grim, but not surprised. I was afraid of that. After your stroke, when Olivia was here, did she have access to your personal papers, computer, phone? I thought back to those confusing days. She organized my medications, did some grocery, shopping, and she helped me pay a few bills online because my hands weren't steady enough. She would have seen my passwords then. Tom's silence spoke volumes. I don't want to believe it, I whispered. I know you don't. Nobody wants to believe their child could betray them this way. In that moment, the full weight of what was happening crashed down on me. My own daughter, whom I had sacrificed for, supported, and loved unconditionally, had not only abandoned me in my time of need, but was actively trying to take what little I had left. The pain was almost physical, a crushing pressure that made it difficult to breathe. What did I do wrong, Tom? How did I raise someone capable of this? He moved to sit beside me, his voice gentle but firm. This isn't about your parenting, Martha. Some people simply develop a sense of entitlement that no amount of good parenting can prevent. Olivia has made her choices. The question now is, what choices will you make? I looked at him, this kind man who had stepped in without hesitation when I needed help. I don't know. I've never been good at confrontation. This isn't just about confrontation. It's about protection. Protecting yourself, your future, your dignity. He was right, of course. For too long, I had avoided difficult conversations. With Olivia, making excuses for her behavior, enabling her demands rather than setting boundaries. I had told myself it was what mothers do, sacrifice without limits, love without conditions. But perhaps true maternal love required something different. The courage to see clearly, to establish boundaries, to require respect. I need time to think, I said finally. Tom nodded. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake, my mind cycling through years of memories, searching for the moment when things had gone wrong. There had always been signs. Olivia's childhood tantrums when she didn't get her way, her teenage dismissal of household rules, her adult expectation that financial support was her due rather than a gift. I had interpreted these behaviors as phases, as normal developmental challenges, as the natural friction between parent and child. Now I wondered if they had been warnings I'd chosen to ignore. By morning, I had made a decision. I would no longer enable behavior that harmed me, no matter who it came from. I would protect what remained of my life and resources. And I would reclaim my sense of self-worth, which had become so entwined with my daughter's approval that I'd lost sight of its independent value. Over breakfast, I shared my thoughts with Tom. "I'm going to confront Olivia and Ryan," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Not with anger or accusations, but with clarity. I need to establish boundaries and make my expectations clear. Tom studied me over his coffee mug. "Are you sure you're ready for that conversation? It won't be easy." "No, it won't. But avoiding difficult things hasn't served me well so far." I managed a small smile. "Besides, I taught teenagers for 35 years. I know something about handling uncomfortable conversations." He returned the smile. "That you do. And what about your finances?" "I'm meeting with my attorney tomorrow. I need to update my will and power of attorney. And I'm going to check into that investment Olivia and Ryan claim to make with my money. If it doesn't exist—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "If it doesn't exist, you'll decide what to do then," Tom said gently. "One step at a time." That afternoon, I called Olivia and asked her and Ryan to come for dinner the following week. I kept my tone light, giving no indication of what I intended to discuss. Olivia seemed surprised but agreed readily enough. "Is everything okay? Mom, you sound different." "I'm feeling much better," I said truthfully. "My recovery is progressing well. I thought it would be nice for us to catch up properly." "Great! We'll bring wine. Is Thursday good?" "Thursday is perfect." After hanging up, I turned to Tom, who had been pretending not to listen from across the room. "They're coming Thursday evening. Do you want me to make myself scarce?" I considered this. Part of me wanted his steady presence for support, but another part recognized that this conversation needed to happen without an audience. "Yes, I think that would be best. But would you mind being nearby? Perhaps you could take Rusty for a walk and come back after they've gone?" "Of course." He hesitated, then added, "Martha, no matter what happens on Thursday, remember that you're not alone in this. You have people who care about you, who value you for exactly who you are." His words touched something deep within me, a wound that had been festering for longer than I cared to admit. In my single-minded focus on being a good mother to Olivia, I had neglected other relationships, other sources of joy and meaning. I had allowed my world to narrow until my daughter's approval became the primary measure of my worth. No more. Whatever happened on Thursday, I was reclaiming my life. The stroke that had initially seemed like the beginning of the end was revealing itself to be something else entirely, a painful but necessary awakening. The days leading up to Thursday passed with surprising swiftness. My physical strength continued to improve, the slight drag in my left foot diminishing, my hand coordination returning to normal, my speech clear and steady. But it was the internal transformation that felt most significant. With each passing day, I found myself standing a little straighter, speaking a little more directly, and most importantly, thinking more clearly about what I wanted for my remaining years. My meeting with Patricia Winters, my attorney, proved enlightening. A sharp-minded woman in her 50s with whom I'd had only occasional contact over the years, she listened with increasing concern as I explained my situation. "Martha, I wish you'd come to me sooner," she said, removing her reading glasses. "These financial emergencies from Olivia have established a pattern that could be difficult to address legally." "I'm not looking to take legal action against my daughter," I clarified. "I just want to protect what I have left." "Of course," she nodded. Let's start by reviewing your current will and making necessary updates. As she pulled up my file on her computer, she continued, I also recommend we establish a durable power of attorney that specifically excludes Olivia and Ryan. This will ensure they can't make financial or medical decisions for you if you become incapacitated again. The suggestion sent a pang through my heart. How had we reached this point, where I needed legal protection from my own child? Who would you recommend as an alternative? I asked. Is there someone you trust implicitly? A sibling, perhaps? Or a close friend? My thoughts immediately went to Tom, whose steady support had become my anchor. But I hesitated to place another burden on him. I'll need to think about it, I said. Patricia nodded understandingly. Take your time, but don't wait too long, Martha. The attempted account access you mentioned is concerning. Before leaving her office, I had one more question. Patricia, is there any way to investigate whether an investment actually exists? Olivia and Ryan claim to be putting my money into a property development in Portland. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. I have contacts in real estate law who could make discreet inquiries. If you have any documentation, emails, prospectus materials, anything with specific details, that would help. I didn't. Olivia had provided nothing in writing, and I'd never asked. Another painful realization of my own complicity in this situation. I'll see what I can find out regardless, Patricia assured me. It would be helpful to know whether we're dealing with poor investment choices or potential fraud. The word fraud hung in the air between us. I couldn't bring myself to respond. That evening, Tom and I sat on my back porch, watching as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Rusty dozed at our feet, occasionally twitching in his dreams. Patricia suggested I assign medical and financial power of attorney to someone other than Olivia, I said, breaking our comfortable silence. Tom nodded. That seems wise given what's happened. I was wondering, I hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Would you consider taking on that responsibility? It's a lot to ask, I know. He turned to face me, his expression serious. It's not too much to ask, Martha. I'd be honored. Though I hope it won't be necessary for many years to come. Relief washed over me. Thank you. You know, he said thoughtfully, there's something I've been meaning to show you. Are you up for a short drive tomorrow? Where to? The community garden at Riverside Park. I think you might find it interesting. The next morning, Tom drove us to Riverside Park, a 20-acre green space along the Willamette River that had been transformed in recent years from a neglected municipal park to a vibrant community gathering place. I'd visited occasionally to walk Rusty, but hadn't explored the newer additions. As we followed a winding path, the community garden came into view, a patchwork of raised beds bursting with early spring vegetables, flowering herbs, and young fruit trees. People of all ages worked among the greenery, some weeding, others planting seedlings or adjusting irrigation systems. This is impressive, I remarked. When did all this happen? About 3 years ago, the city donated the land, local businesses contributed materials, and volunteers did the rest. Tom guided me toward a large section at the far end where several older adults were working together. This is what I wanted to show you specifically. A woman in her 70s looked up from her gardening and broke into a wide smile. Tom, you finally brought her. Martha, this is Eleanor Simmons, our garden coordinator. Eleanor, this is Martha Kennedy. Eleanor removed her gardening gloves and extended a soil-dusted hand. The famous Martha. Tom's told us so much about you. He has? I shot Tom a questioning glance, but he just smiled enigmatically. Oh, yes. Former English teacher, book lover, makes the best lemon bars in Oakridge. We've been hoping you'd join us. I was momentarily lost for words. Join you? Our senior gardening collective, Eleanor explained, gesturing to the surrounding plots. We call ourselves the late bloomers. Terrible pun, but it fits. We're all retirees who maintain this section of the community garden together. I've never been much of a gardener, I admitted. Eleanor waved away my concern. Neither was I until I turned 70. Now look at me. I can tell you the Latin name for every plant in this garden. It's never too late to develop a green thumb. For the next hour, Eleanor introduced me to the other late bloomers, a retired dentist, a former bus driver, a librarian, a mechanic, each with their own small plot, but working collectively on larger projects. They shared their knowledge freely, pointing out what they were growing and offering tips with infectious enthusiasm. We meet 3 mornings a week, Eleanor explained as we toured the garden. It's part therapy, part social club, part exercise program, and in the summers, we donate most of our harvest to the food bank. As we prepared to leave, Eleanor pressed a small envelope into my hands. Seeds from my heritage tomatoes. They're nearly foolproof. Think about joining us, Martha. We could use another book lover in the group. Too many science types as it is. She winked at Tom. In the car driving home, I opened the envelope, examining the tiny seeds that held so much potential. Why did you bring me here? I asked Tom. Because recovering from your stroke isn't just about regaining physical strength. It's about rebuilding your life, finding community, purpose, joy. He glanced at me. And because I've watched you, staring at your neglected garden every day, clearly wanting to do something with it but not quite ready to start. I smiled, touched by his observation. You notice a lot. I notice you, he replied simply. Wednesday evening, I began preparing for Olivia and Ryan's visit. I cleaned the house, though it was already tidy thanks to Tom's help. I planned a simple but elegant meal: roast chicken with vegetables, fresh bread, and apple tart for dessert. Nothing extravagant, but nourishing and homey. Tom watched my preparations with a hint of concern. You're not overdoing it, are you? Your recovery. I'm fine, I assured him. Actually, I feel better than I have in months. There's something clarifying about finally facing a difficult truth. He nodded, understanding. Just remember, regardless of how tomorrow goes, you've already taken the hardest step, seeing the situation clearly. That night, after Tom had gone to his own home for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, with promises to return the following evening after Olivia and Ryan left, I sat alone in my bedroom, mentally rehearsing what I needed to say. Not accusations or recriminations, but clear, firm boundaries. I wouldn't let emotion derail the necessary conversation. I slept soundly and woke on Thursday feeling strangely peaceful. Whatever happened that evening, I had support, I had a plan, and most importantly, I had begun to reclaim my sense of self-worth. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and opened the door to my daughter and son-in-law. "Mom!" Olivia exclaimed, embracing me with her usual performative enthusiasm. "You look so much better." Ryan stood behind her, holding an expensive bottle of wine. "Martha, good to see you up and about." I invited them in, accepting the wine, with appropriate gratitude. As we settled in the living room, I noticed Olivia glancing around, perhaps looking for signs of Tom's presence. "Your friend isn't here?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Tom? No, he's giving us privacy for dinner. He's been a tremendous help during my recovery." "I'm sure he has," Ryan commented with a subtle smirk. I chose to ignore the insinuation. "Dinner's almost ready. Would you like a glass of wine while we wait?" Over the meal, conversation remained superficial. Olivia talked about work challenges, Ryan discussed market trends, and I listened attentively, waiting for the right moment. They seemed relaxed, unaware of my internal resolve. As I served dessert, Olivia finally broached the subject I'd been expecting. "Mom, did Ryan mention our idea about looking into retirement communities? We've been researching, And there's a lovely place in Portland called Lakeside Gardens. It's like a resort. Pool, activities, medical staff on site. He mentioned it, I said evenly. It's not something I'm interested in at the moment. Olivia exchanged a quick glance with Ryan. I think you should at least consider it. After your stroke? My recovery is going well, I interrupted gently. My doctors are pleased with my progress. But what about the next time? Ryan interjected. You were lucky this time, Martha. What if you're alone when something more serious happens? That's a concern for many people my age, I acknowledged. But moving to an assisted living facility isn't the only solution. What's your alternative? Olivia asked, a hint of impatience creeping into her voice. I took a sip of water, gathering my thoughts. I've been making some changes, establishing a local support network, modifying my home for safer living, reviewing my legal and financial arrangements. Ryan's attention sharpened. Financial arrangements? Yes. I met his gaze steadily. I met with my attorney this week to update my will and power of attorney documents. Silence fell over the table. Olivia recovered first, her smile tight. That's proactive of you, Mom. Is everything okay? Actually, Olivia, everything is not okay. I folded my hands in my lap, keeping my voice calm. And that's what I wanted to discuss with you both tonight. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. Ryan straightened in his chair, while Olivia's expression cycled rapidly between confusion and wariness. I've been reflecting on our relationship over the past few years, I continued. Specifically, the financial support I've provided and what seems to be an imbalance in our family dynamic. What are you talking about? Olivia demanded, her voice rising slightly. I'm talking about the $200,000 I transferred to you 3 months ago and the numerous other financial gifts before that. I'm talking about the attempted withdrawals from my account after my stroke. I'm talking about your husband's suggestion that I sell my home for reasons that seem more beneficial to you than to me. Ryan's face hardened. That's completely unfair, Martha. We're thinking about your welfare. Are you? I kept my gaze steady. Then perhaps you can explain the investment you claim to make with my money. The property development in Portland that would double returns within 18 months. My attorney hasn't been able to find any record of such a development. The color drained from Olivia's face. You had no right to investigate our business dealings. I have every right to know where my retirement savings went, especially when it represents nearly half of what I have to live on for the rest of my life. Ryan leaned forward, voice lowered as if sharing a confidence. Martha, real estate development is complex. The paperwork doesn't always reflect the actual projects in progress. If you'd asked, we would have explained. I'm asking. Now, I said simply. A heavy silence fell. Olivia and Ryan exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Fine, Olivia said finally, her tone brittle. The development project hit some complications. The initial investors pulled out, and we had to use the capital to cover existing commitments. You lost the money, I translated. We didn't lose it, Ryan interjected quickly. It's tied up in other investments. These things take time to mature. I nodded slowly. And the attempted withdrawals from my account after my stroke? Were those also investments? Olivia's expression hardened. Are you accusing us of trying to steal from you? I'm asking for an explanation. This is ridiculous, Olivia pushed back from the table. We've done nothing but try to help you, and you're treating us like criminals. I maintained my composure despite the pain lancing through my heart. I don't think you're criminals, Olivia. I think you're my daughter and son-in-law who have developed a pattern of behavior that isn't healthy for any of us. What's that supposed to mean? Ryan demanded. It means that I've enabled a situation where my resources, financial and emotional, flow in one direction without reciprocity. It means that when I truly needed help, your response was to consider me a burden rather than family. And it means that things need to change. Olivia stood, her face flushed with anger. So that's it? You're cutting us off because I couldn't. Drop everything to take care of you because we had one failed investment? I rose as well, keeping my voice measured. I'm establishing boundaries, Olivia. I will always be your mother, and I will always love you. But I can no longer be your financial safety net or your contingency plan. This is about him, isn't it? Olivia's voice turned accusatory. That old man who's moved himself into your life, he's turned you against us. Tom has nothing to do with this decision, I said firmly. He's simply shown me what genuine care looks like, help offered freely, without resentment or ulterior motives. Ryan scoffed. And you don't think he has ulterior motives? A single man spending all this time with a vulnerable widow who owns her home outright? The suggestion might have wounded me weeks ago. Now it merely revealed how little they understood about authentic relationships. Not everyone measures connections in terms of what they can gain, Ryan. I turned to my daughter, whose familiar features were contorted with a mix of anger and something that might have been fear. Olivia, I want us to rebuild our relationship, but it has to be on new terms, mutual respect, honesty, reasonable expectations. What about the money? Ryan demanded bluntly. The $200,000 you invested with us. Are you expecting that back? I hadn't thought I could still be surprised by their audacity, but this question momentarily left me speechless. Yes, I said finally. I expect you to return what you can. We can work out a payment plan if necessary. Olivia laughed, a harsh sound without humor. You're really doing this? Treating your own daughter like a debtor? No, I'm treating my adult daughter like an adult, with adult responsibilities and consequences. Ryan's expression had shifted to cold calculation. And if we don't have the money to return? Then we'll address that reality honestly, I replied. But regardless of the financial outcome, my other boundaries remain firm. No more emergency requests for money. No pressure to sell my home. No attempts to access my accounts. Or what? Olivia challenged. You'll sue your own daughter? Cut me out of your will. I hope it won't come to legal action, I said quietly. As for my will, I've made adjustments to reflect my current circumstances and to protect my interests. The details aren't relevant to tonight's discussion. Ryan placed his hand on Olivia's arm, a restraining gesture. Let's go, Liv. This conversation isn't productive. My daughter stared at me, her expression a complex mixture of emotions. For a moment, I thought I glimpsed something like shame beneath the anger and defensiveness. Then her features hardened again. Fine, we're leaving. She gathered her purse. When you come to your senses and realize that Tom Callahan is manipulating you for your money, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms. The irony of her accusation was so profound I almost laughed. Instead, I simply said, I love you, Olivia. That hasn't changed. When you're ready to talk again, really talk, I'll be here. They left without another word, the front door closing with unnecessary force behind them. I stood in my dining room, surrounded by the remnants of our dinner, feeling strangely hollow yet lightened. The confrontation I had dreaded for so long was over, and I had emerged intact. I began clearing the table, methodically stacking dishes and wrapping leftover food. The mechanical tasks helped settle my racing thoughts. When the kitchen was tidy, I made a cup of tea and sat on the back porch, watching darkness descend over my garden. The phone call came an hour later. I hesitated when I saw Tom's name on the screen, uncertain whether I was ready to discuss what had happened. Hello? Martha. Tom's voice was warm. Just checking to see if you're okay. I can call back tomorrow, if you prefer. No, it's fine. I took a deep breath. They've gone. How did it go? About as well as could be expected, which is to say, not well at all. I found myself describing the conversation in detail: Olivia's anger, Ryan's cold calculations, their accusations about Tom's motives. They seem to think you're after my money. Tom's gentle laugh carried through the phone, projecting their own motivations onto others. Classic defensive mechanism. That's what I thought too. I sighed deeply. I don't know what happens next, Tom. I made it clear I expect them to return the money, but I'm not holding my breath. Did establishing boundaries give you any sense of closure? I considered the question carefully. Not closure exactly. More like a new beginning. The relationship isn't ended, just fundamentally changed. Whether Olivia can adapt to that change remains to be seen. And how are you feeling? Sad, relieved, a little numb. I paused, realizing there was another emotion beneath those more obvious ones. And proud, I think, of finally standing up for myself. You should be proud, Tom affirmed. It took tremendous courage to do what you did tonight. We talked. A while longer, his steady voice a balm to my raw emotions. Before hanging up, I asked, "Would you like to come for breakfast tomorrow? I'd like to tell you about the community garden. I think I might join those late bloomers after all." I'd like that very much, Martha. That night, sleep came more easily than I expected. Whatever storms lay ahead with Olivia, I had weathered the first and most difficult confrontation. I had spoken my truth calmly and with dignity. The outcome wasn't what I'd hoped for, but it was honest, and there was a certain peace in that honesty. The next morning dawned clear and bright. I let Rusty out into the backyard and stood watching him explore the dewy grass, his elderly movements still infused with curiosity and joy. From my vantage point on the porch, I could see the neglected flower beds along the fence line, the empty vegetable garden boxes Daniel had built years ago, the overgrown rose bushes that needed skilled pruning. Eleanor's seed packet sat on my kitchen windowsill. Heritage tomatoes, nearly foolproof, she'd said. Perhaps it was time to test that theory. I was still in the backyard, clearing weeds from one of the garden boxes, when Tom arrived. He stood at the garden gate, watching me with an approving smile. "Starting your own version of the late bloomers?" he asked. I straightened, brushing soil from my hands. "Just preparing the ground. Eleanor's seeds deserve a fighting chance. Need a hand?" "Always." As we worked side by side in the morning sunshine, I felt a subtle shift within myself, a quiet certainty that whatever came next with Olivia, I would face it from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. I had spent decades nurturing others. Now it was time to nurture myself, to cultivate new growth in the garden of my own life. The heritage tomato seeds might take time to bear fruit. So might the boundaries I had established with my daughter. But I had taken the crucial first step, breaking the soil, removing the weeds, preparing for new possibilities. 2 days after the confrontation with Olivia and Ryan, Patricia called with news about the investment. "As I suspected, Martha, there is no property development matching the description you were given. I had my contact check all pending permits and recent land acquisitions in the Portland area. Nothing fits." I absorbed this confirmation of what I already knew in my heart. What does that mean legally? It depends on what you want to pursue. There's potential for a civil case for fraud or misrepresentation, but lawsuits between family members are messy, expensive, and emotionally draining. "I'm not interested in suing my daughter," I said firmly, "but I would like to recover some of what I gave them, if possible. Then I suggest a formal demand letter outlining repayment terms. It establishes your serious intent without immediately escalating to court action." I agreed to this approach, and Patricia promised to draft the letter promptly. After hanging up, I sat quietly, processing the conflicting emotions churning within me. The confirmation that Olivia and Ryan had deliberately deceived me about the investment was painful but not surprising. What surprised me was my own response, not devastation or rage, but a calm determination to address the situation directly and move forward. Tom found me in this contemplative state when he arrived for our now regular afternoon walk. "Patricia confirmed there's no investment," I told him as we strolled through the neighborhood, Rusty ambling contentedly beside us. "She's sending a formal demand letter for repayment." "How do you feel about that?" "Like I'm finally treating the situation with appropriate seriousness," I replied. "For too long, I've acted as if Olivia's financial requests were just an extension of childhood allowances. But these are substantial sums that impact my ability to live independently as I age." Tom nodded. "Your security matters, Martha." "It does," I agreed, the simple statement feeling like a small revolution. "And so does my happiness." A week passed with no response from Olivia or Ryan. I tried not to let their silence consume my thoughts, focusing instead on my continuing recovery and my budding garden project. The formal demand letter from Patricia went out by certified mail, requiring a signature upon delivery. 3 days later, she confirmed it had been received, but still nothing from my daughter. "Should I be worried about the silence?" I asked Tom as we worked together planting Eleanor's tomato seedlings in the newly prepared garden beds. "I'd say it's predictable," he replied, carefully patting soil around a fragile stem. "They're probably discussing their options, possibly consulting their own attorney." "Do you think they'll fight it?" Tom sat back on his heels, considering. "It depends on whether they still have the money and how much they value their relationship with you versus the financial gain." I nodded, trying to accept the painful reality that my daughter might choose money over our relationship. "I keep wondering where I went wrong, Tom. How did I raise someone who could do this?" "Martha," he said gently, "you're still approaching this as if Olivia's behavior is a reflection of your parenting. Some people make selfish choices regardless of how they were raised. Look at siblings from the same household. Often one turns out compassionate and responsible while another becomes manipulative or entitled." "I suppose," I conceded, "it's just hard not to feel responsible." "That's because you're a good person who takes responsibility seriously." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Now, hand me that watering can. These little plants need a good drink to settle in." As April gave way to May, I established new rhythms in my life. 3 mornings a week, I joined the late bloomers at the community garden, where Eleanor and the others welcomed me with warmth and practical gardening advice. I started volunteering at the library one afternoon a week, leading a reading group for seniors. My recovery progressed to the point where my doctors reduced my follow-up visits to monthly check-ins. Tom remained a steady presence, though we'd transitioned from his stay in my guest room to regular shared activities: morning walks with Rusty, working in my garden, occasional dinners either at my house or his small but charming bungalow on the other side of town. Our relationship evolved naturally, neither of us feeling the need to define it with labels. Just as I was beginning to accept that Olivia might never respond to the demand letter, my phone rang one evening. Ryan's name appeared on the screen. I braced myself before answering. "Hello, Ryan." "Martha." His voice held none of its usual smooth confidence. "We need to talk about this letter from your attorney." "Yes, we do. Look, we don't have the money. Not all of it anyway. The markets have been volatile, investments underperforming. You know how it is." I kept my tone neutral. "I understand financial difficulties, Ryan. That's why Patricia suggested a payment plan." He cleared his throat. "The thing is, Martha, we're not in a position to start repayments right now. Maybe in 6 months, or—" "What happened to the money, Ryan?" I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. $200,000 doesn't simply disappear. A pause. We had some unexpected expenses. Such as? Is this really necessary? Drilling down into our personal finances? When those finances include a substantial portion of my retirement savings, yes, it's necessary. Ryan sighed heavily. Fine. We put a deposit on a vacation property in Bend. The real estate market there is booming, and we needed to move quickly. Then Olivia wanted to renovate parts of our house, and there were some outstanding credit card debts that needed clearing. I absorbed this information silently. My retirement savings, carefully accumulated over decades of modest living and conscientious saving, had funded their luxury purchases and debt clearance. Not investments, not emergencies, just lifestyle enhancements. I see, I said finally. And the vacation property in Bend. How much equity do you have in it? Martha, you can't seriously expect us to sell property to repay you. That's not how family works. The irony was so profound I almost laughed. Actually, Ryan, that's exactly how responsibility works, family or otherwise. You took money under false pretenses and spent it on luxury items. Now you have an obligation to make it right. Olivia said you'd be difficult about this. His tone hardened. What exactly are you planning to do? Sue your own daughter? Take us to court? I'm planning to hold you accountable, I replied steadily. If that requires legal action, then yes, that's a step I'm prepared to take. You're bluffing, Ryan scoffed. You wouldn't put Olivia through that kind of stress. I wouldn't want to, I agreed, but I will if necessary. The choice is yours. Work with me on a reasonable repayment plan, or force me to pursue other options. This is that old man's influence, isn't it? Tom, whatever his name is, he's turned you against us. Tom has nothing to do with this decision, I said firmly. This is about basic integrity and taking responsibility for your actions. Ryan's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. You know, Martha, if you push this, there will be consequences. Olivia is devastated that her own mother would treat her this way. You might never see her again. Is that what you want? To lose your only child over money? His attempt at emotional manipulation might once have worked. Now it only strengthened my resolve. I'm not the one choosing money over family, Ryan. You and Olivia made that choice when you decided to take advantage of my generosity and trust. I kept my voice calm but firm. I'll give you 1 week to come back with a proposal for repayment. After that, Patricia will proceed with legal options. You'll regret this, he warned before hanging up. I sat quietly after the call ended, processing the conversation. Ryan's threats didn't surprise me, nor did his attempt to shift blame. What surprised me was my own reaction. Not fear or guilt, but a steady certainty that I was doing the right thing. When Tom arrived for our planned dinner an hour later, I recounted the conversation. He actually threatened that you might never see Olivia again. Tom shook his head in disbelief. That's textbook emotional manipulation. I know, I said, setting the table for our meal. The strange thing is, it didn't work. A month ago, that threat would have devastated me. Now I see it for what it is. A desperate attempt to maintain control. Tom studied me with a mix of pride and concern. You've come a long way in a short time, Martha. But don't underestimate how painful this estrangement might become if they follow through. I'm not underestimating it, I assured him. But I've realized something important. The relationship I've had with Olivia these past few years isn't actually the loving mother-daughter bond I pretended it was. It was a transaction, my money and support in exchange for occasional attention, and the illusion of family connection. And that's not enough for you anymore, Tom observed. No, I agreed. It's not. True to my expectations, a week passed with no proposal from Ryan or Olivia. Patricia proceeded with the next step, a more formal legal notice outlining the consequences of non-repayment, including potential litigation. The response came swiftly this time, in the form of a letter from their attorney. The contents were as cold as they were calculating. They acknowledged receiving funds, but characterized them as gifts rather than investments, cited my history of financial support as establishing a pattern of gifting, and questioned my mental competence given my recent stroke. Patricia called me immediately after receiving a copy. "This is aggressive but not unexpected," she said. "They're laying groundwork to claim you willingly gave the money with no expectation of return." "What now?" I asked. "We have options. We can proceed with a civil suit for fraud, though that's costly and time-consuming. Or we can propose mediation, a neutral third party helping negotiate a settlement." "Mediation sounds less adversarial," I noted. "It is, and it might preserve some possibility of reconciliation down the road. But it only works if both parties participate in good faith." After careful consideration, I chose to pursue mediation. Patricia arranged for a respected retired judge to serve as mediator, and a date was set for early June, nearly 3 weeks away. During this period of waiting, I threw myself into my garden and community activities with renewed vigor. The physical work of gardening provided an outlet for my anxieties, while the camaraderie of the late bloomers offered emotional support without the need for detailed explanations. Eleanor, with her direct manner and sharp insights, became a particular friend. One morning, as we worked side by side transplanting seedlings, she asked the question most people tactfully avoided. "So, trouble with your daughter, is it?" I looked up, startled by her directness. "How did you know?" She smiled kindly. "I recognized the signs. That particular mix of determination and heartbreak. Been there myself with my son years ago." "What happened?" I asked, curious about her experience. "Money. What else?" "He got involved with a woman who saw him as a meal ticket to my bank account." She continued planting as she spoke, her gnarled hands working with practiced efficiency. "When I finally said no, they both turned nasty. Didn't speak to me for nearly 4 years. 4 years, I echoed, the prospect of such a long estrangement hitting me hard. "How did you cope?" "By building a life that wasn't centered around waiting for his return," she said simply. "I traveled, made new friends, started this garden, found purpose that had nothing to do with being somebody's mother." She patted the soil around a delicate herb seedling. "When he finally came back, after she left him, of course, I was glad to see him, but I was no longer desperate for his approval." Her words resonated deeply. I, too, had been building a life no longer centered around Olivia's approval or presence. It wasn't the life I had envisioned for my retirement years, but it held its own richness and meaning. "Did you forgive him?" I asked. Eleanor considered this. "Eventually. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to resume. We have a relationship now, but with clearer boundaries. He knows certain topics are off limits, especially financial ones." "I hope Olivia and I can reach that point someday," I admitted. "You might," Eleanor said, neither pessimistic nor particularly optimistic. "But don't put your life on hold waiting for it to happen. That's the surest way to bitter disappointment." As the mediation date approached, I received an unexpected call from Maggie Chen, my old friend who had been visiting her daughter in Arizona. "Martha, I'm back in town and hearing all sorts of rumors. Lunch tomorrow? You can tell me everything." We met at the Old Mill Cafe, our usual spot. Maggie, refreshed from her extended family visit, listened intently as I recounted the events of the past 2 months. "I can hardly believe it," she said when I finished. "Well, actually the part about Olivia and Ryan taking advantage I can believe. I never trusted that slick husband of hers. But you, standing up for yourself, joining a gardening group, possibly taking legal action, that's the Martha Kennedy I always knew was in there." I smiled at her enthusiasm. "I'm not sure I knew she was in there." "Oh, she was. You were just too busy being a selfless mother to notice." Maggie's eyes twinkled. "And Tom Callahan, Always thought he carried a torch for you. even back when Daniel was alive. It's not like that, I protested, feeling a flush rise in my cheeks. Isn't it? Maggie raised an eyebrow. The man has been at your side through all of this. That's not just neighborly concern, Martha. I changed the subject, uncomfortable with Maggie's perceptiveness. The mediation is next week. I'm nervous about seeing Olivia and Ryan. Maggie sobered. Of course you are. But remember, you're not going in alone. You have your attorney and you have a legitimate claim. More importantly, you have your dignity and self-respect. The morning of the mediation arrived warm and clear. I dressed carefully in a simple navy dress that conveyed seriousness without severity. Tom drove me to the mediator's office, a neutral space in a downtown professional building. I'll be right here when you finish, he promised, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. No matter how it goes in there, remember that you've already won the most important battle, reclaiming your independence. The mediator, Judge Caroline Winters, was a composed woman in her 60s with keen eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She explained the process clearly. Each side would present their position. She would ask clarifying questions, and then she would work with us to find common ground for a potential settlement. Olivia and Ryan arrived with their attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit. Olivia barely glanced at me, her expression closed and defensive. Ryan maintained his usual, polished facade, though I detected tension in the set of his shoulders. Patricia presented our case first, outlining the pattern of financial requests, the specific representation of the $200,000 as an investment, and my subsequent discovery that no such investment existed. She provided documentation of my diminished financial situation and the impact on my retirement security. The opposing attorney countered with arguments about family financial support being customary, the alleged verbal agreement being unenforceable, and insinuations about my mental state after the stroke affecting my recollection of events. Throughout these presentations, I maintained my composure, meeting Olivia's occasional glances with a steady gaze that conveyed neither anger nor submission. When Judge Winters asked me directly about my understanding of the money transfer, I spoke clearly and confidently. I provided the funds specifically as an investment in a property development that would generate returns. Had Olivia and Ryan told me they needed money for a vacation home and home renovations, I would not have compromised my retirement security for those purposes. And what outcome are you seeking today? The judge asked. Ideally, full repayment of the $200,000. Realistically, I understand they may not have liquid assets available. I'm open to a structured repayment plan or the transfer of equivalent equity from their vacation property. Judge Winters turned to Olivia. Would you like to respond directly? Olivia hesitated, then nodded stiffly. My mother has always supported me financially. That's the relationship we've had. She never asked for repayment before. Not for college, not for my wedding, not for our house down payment. This sudden change feels like she's choosing her new boyfriend over her own daughter. The reference to Tom as my boyfriend was clearly intended to diminish both him and our relationship, but I refused to be baited. The difference, I replied calmly, is that those previous gifts were given freely, with full knowledge of their purpose. This transfer was based on a specific representation about an investment opportunity that didn't exist. The judge nodded thoughtfully, then addressed Ryan. Sir, do you dispute that you characterized this request as an investment in a specific development project? Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I may have mentioned potential investment opportunities in Portland. Martha might have misunderstood the specific allocation of funds. Is that your recollection, Ms. Kennedy? Judge Winters asked me. No, I said firmly. The conversation was explicit. Olivia called requesting funds for the perfect investment opportunity, a property development in Portland with guaranteed returns within 18 months. When I expressed concern about the amount, She assured me it was a solid investment that would eventually allow them to take care of me. The judge made notes, then addressed all of us. I'm going to speak with each party separately now to explore settlement possibilities. The separate conversations revealed the core issues quickly. In private, Ryan admitted they had spent most of the money and could not make immediate repayment. Their attorney suggested a nominal settlement of $50,000 payable over 5 years, essentially offering me 25 cents on the dollar. Patricia dismissed this as inadequate, countering with a demand for the full amount plus interest, secured by a lien against their vacation property. After several rounds of back and forth, Judge Winters proposed a compromise: $150,000 to be repaid over 3 years, with the vacation property serving as collateral. If payments were missed, I would have the right to force a sale of the property to recover the remaining balance. It's less than you deserve, Patricia whispered to me, but it's enforceable and substantial. I nodded my agreement. The terms weren't perfect, but they represented a meaningful consequence for Olivia and Ryan's actions, while still leaving room for potential reconciliation in the future. When Judge Winters presented the proposal to both parties together, Ryan's face darkened with anger, but he remained silent. Olivia looked directly at me for the first time that day. Is this really what you want, Mom? To legally bind your own daughter to debt payments? The question was designed to trigger guilt, but I met her gaze steadily. What I want, Olivia, is honesty and mutual respect between us. This agreement isn't about punishing you. It's about establishing accountability. I'm simply asking for the return of funds that were taken under false pretenses. We'll need to consider the proposal, their attorney interjected smoothly. Judge Winters nodded. Take the time you need. I'll step out to give you privacy for discussion. Once the judge left, Ryan immediately launched into a heated whisper with their attorney. Olivia continued to stare at me, her expression a complex mixture of anger, resentment, and something that might have been shame. After several tense minutes, their attorney addressed Patricia. My clients are prepared to accept the terms with one additional condition. Ms. Kennedy agrees to no further financial claims against them, regardless of future circumstances. Patricia looked to me for guidance. I nodded my agreement, and she confirmed the acceptance of terms. With the substantive issues resolved, the remainder of the mediation focused on drafting the formal agreement. By late afternoon, all parties had signed the necessary documents. The first payment would be due in 30 days, with regular monthly payments thereafter. As we prepared to leave, I approached Olivia, hoping for some moment of connection beyond the legal transaction we had just completed. I hope this can be a new beginning for us, I said quietly. I've never stopped loving you, Olivia. She gathered her belongings without meeting my eyes. If you loved me, we wouldn't be here. Ryan placed his hand on her back, guiding her toward the door. Let's go, Liv. There's nothing more to say. I watched them leave, a hollow ache in my chest despite the technical victory of the mediation. Patricia squeezed my arm sympathetically. Give it time, Martha. Once the emotions cool, there may be room for reconciliation. Perhaps, I said, not entirely convinced. Thank you for everything today. Tom was waiting in the reception area, rising immediately when he saw me. How did it go? We reached an agreement. They'll repay most of it over 3 years. That's good news, he said, studying my expression. Isn't it? It is, I acknowledged. But the relationship feels more damaged than ever. Olivia could barely look at me. Tom guided me gently toward the elevator. Healing takes time. You've taken the first necessary step, establishing that there are consequences for their actions. What happens next isn't entirely in your control. Outside in the warm June sunshine, I took a deep breath, letting the fresh air clear the stuffiness of the mediation room from my lungs. Would a walk help? Tom suggested. Riverside Park isn't far. We could check on the community garden. I nodded gratefully. I'd like that. As we strolled through the park, the weight of the day's confrontation gradually lifted. The community garden was vibrant with early summer growth, vegetables stretching toward the sun, flowers blooming in riotous color, people of all ages tending their plots with care and enthusiasm. Eleanor spotted us from her section and waved us over. Perfect timing. We just harvested the first strawberries. Come have a taste. The small red berries were warm from the sun, bursting with sweet tart flavor that immediately transported me to childhood summers. I closed my eyes, savoring the simple pleasure. Nothing in the world tastes better than a sun-warmed strawberry, Eleanor declared. How did your meeting go? We reached an agreement, I said, not wanting to elaborate. She nodded, understanding my reticence. Good. Now you can focus on more important things, like these beautiful black crim tomatoes you'll be harvesting in a few weeks. Her matter-of-fact return to gardening was exactly what I needed, a reminder that life continued beyond today's difficult confrontation. My relationship with Olivia might be damaged, perhaps irrevocably, but other relationships were flourishing. Your own garden's coming along nicely too, Eleanor added. Those seedlings you took home last week have probably doubled in size already. They have, Tom confirmed. Martha's developing quite the green thumb. Eleanor smiled knowingly at us. Gardens and relationships both need regular attention, good foundations, and patience through the seasons. Isn't that right, Tom? He met her gaze with an amused twinkle. Absolutely right, Eleanor. Walking home later, Tom and I fell into a comfortable silence. The mediation had been draining, but I felt a strange sense of completeness, as if a necessary chapter had been closed, allowing space for new stories to begin. Penny for your thoughts? Tom asked as we approached my house. I was thinking about what Eleanor said about gardens and relationships, how they both need foundations, attention, and patience. I glanced at him. I haven't been very good at those things with Olivia. Maybe I made it too easy for her to take without giving back. You can only learn from the past, not change it, Tom said gently. What matters is how you move forward. As we reached my front porch, Rusty greeted us with his usual enthusiasm, despite his advancing age. I bent to ruffle his ears, grateful for his uncomplicated affection. Would you like to stay for dinner? I asked Tom. Nothing fancy, just a simple pasta with vegetables from the garden. I'd like that very much, he replied, his smile warming something deep inside me. That evening, as we prepared the meal together, moving around my kitchen with the easy synchronization of people comfortable in each other's space, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Tom's presence, but for my own emerging strength and clarity. Summer arrived in Oakridge with steady warmth and long golden evenings. My garden flourished under the combined efforts of Tom and me, with regular advice from Eleanor and the late bloomers. The first payment from Olivia and Ryan arrived exactly on schedule, a bank transfer with no accompanying note or message. I acknowledged receipt through Patricia, maintaining the formal channel of communication that had been established during mediation. Life settled into new rhythms centered around activities and people that nourished rather than depleted me. 3. Mornings a week at the community garden, one afternoon at the library reading group, occasional dinners with Maggie, and regular time with Tom, cooking, gardening, attending local concerts in the park. My stroke recovery progressed to the point where my doctor pronounced me better than new during my quarterly checkup. Your blood pressure is lower than it's been in years, Dr. Wilson observed, reviewing my chart. Exercise steady, diet improved. Whatever you're doing, Martha, keep it up. What I was doing, I realized, was living unburdened by constant worry about Olivia's next crisis or financial request. The freedom was bittersweet. I missed my daughter deeply, but I couldn't deny the positive impact on my health and spirit. In mid-July, I received an unexpected letter from my granddaughter Claire, Maggie's daughter who lived in Arizona. She was planning a 2-week visit to Oregon in August and wondered if she might stay with me for part of that time. "I'd love to reconnect," she wrote. "Mom talks about your garden and your book group, and it sounds like you're creating such a wonderful life. I could use some of that wisdom right now." Claire had always been special to me, a bright, thoughtful girl who shared my love of literature and gardening. She'd moved to Arizona for college 5 years earlier and had stayed after securing a position teaching at a community college. Though we exchanged occasional emails and holiday cards, it had been years since we'd spent meaningful time together. Her visit gave me a new project. The guest room, which had been hastily prepared for Tom during my recovery, needed a more thoughtful renovation. I enlisted Tom's help to repaint the walls a warm sage green, replace the dated bedding with fresh linens, and add small touches to make the space inviting: a reading lamp, a vase for fresh flowers, a small bookshelf stocked with novels I thought Claire might enjoy. "You're nesting," Tom observed with amusement as we arranged the furniture. "Is that bad?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Not at all. It's lovely to see you excited about hosting someone." He straightened a framed botanical print we'd hung on the freshly painted wall. "Claire is lucky to have you in her life." The week before Claire's arrival, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, there was a moment of silence before Olivia's voice came through. "Mom, it's me." My heart leapt at the sound of her voice. "Olivia, how are you?" "I'm okay." She sounded uncertain, very unlike her usual confident self. "I wanted to let you know that we made the second payment today. It should be in your account already." "Thank you for telling me," I said, searching for neutral ground in this unexpected conversation. "I appreciate your keeping to the agreement." Another pause. "Ryan and I are separating." The news caught me by surprise. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "Are you all right?" A hollow laugh. "Not really. Turns out he's been having an affair with his business partner's wife for 2 years. Her voice cracked slightly. I feel like such a fool. I closed my eyes, absorbing her pain despite our estrangement. "You're not a fool, Olivia. You trusted someone who betrayed that trust. Like I betrayed yours." The words hung in the air between us, the first acknowledgement from her of what had happened. "Yes," I said simply, neither accusatory nor dismissive. She drew a shaky breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since the mediation. About patterns. About choices. When Ryan's betrayal came to light, it forced me to see other things more clearly." "That makes sense," I encouraged gently. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, "but I wanted you to know that I'm taking responsibility for my part in what happened. I'll continue making the payments regardless of what happens with Ryan and me." "Thank you for telling me this, Olivia. It means a lot. Could we—" She hesitated. "Could we maybe have coffee sometime? Not right away. I need to sort through some things first. But eventually?" Hope fluttered in my chest, though I tempered it with caution. "I'd like that. Whenever you're ready." After we hung up, I sat quietly processing the conversation. Olivia's separation from Ryan created complicated feelings: sadness for her, pain, concern for her well-being, but also a cautious optimism that without his influence, she might find her way back to more authentic values. I called Tom later that evening to share the news. His response was measured but hopeful. "People sometimes need to experience betrayal themselves before they can truly understand the impact of their actions on others," he observed. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it might create space for genuine change." "That's what I'm hoping," I agreed, though I'm trying not to expect too much too quickly. "Wise approach," he said. Meanwhile, you have Claire's visit to look forward to. Claire arrived on a sun-drenched Monday morning, stepping out of her rental car with the easy grace I remembered. At 32, she had matured into a poised young woman while retaining the warm smile and curious eyes of her youth. "Aunt Martha," she exclaimed, embracing me warmly. "You look absolutely wonderful." "So do you, my dear." "The desert air must agree with you," she laughed. "It's the lack of humidity. Makes everyone look deceptively well-preserved." As I showed her around the house, Claire's gaze lingered on the changes I'd made since her last visit years earlier. New paint colors, rearranged furniture, and most notably, the abundance of plants and fresh flowers from my garden. "This place feels so different," she observed. "Lighter somehow. More vibrant." "I've been making some changes," I acknowledged. "Reclaiming spaces, I suppose you could say." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "Mom mentioned you'd had some challenges with Olivia." I appreciated Maggie's discretion in not sharing the full details. "We've had a difficult patch," I confirmed. "But we're beginning to find our way toward something new, I hope." "Family. Relationships are complicated," Claire said. "I should know. My relationship with Mom has had its moments too." Over the next few days, Claire and I fell into an easy rhythm. Mornings in the garden, afternoons exploring Oakridge's small but charming downtown, or visiting the community garden where Eleanor immediately took Claire under her wing, evenings cooking together or reading companionably in the living room. We talked about books, about her teaching career, about my garden, careful at first to avoid more personal topics. On her fourth evening, as we sat on the back porch watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk, Claire finally broached the subject that had been hovering unspoken between us. "Mom told me you had a stroke earlier this year." I nodded. "A mild one, thankfully. I've recovered well." She also mentioned that Olivia wasn't exactly supportive during your recovery. I chose my words carefully. Olivia has her own life, her own priorities. Not everyone is equipped to be a caregiver. Claire studied me with perceptive eyes so like her mother's. "That's a very generous interpretation." "Perhaps," I acknowledged, "but I've learned that dwelling on disappointments doesn't serve me well. Better to focus on gratitude for those who did step forward, like Tom and the late bloomers, and your mother when she returned from visiting you." "And who exactly is this Tom I keep hearing about?" Claire asked, a teasing note entering her voice. "Mom referred to him as your gentleman friend, but that tells me precisely nothing useful." I felt a flush rise in my cheeks. "Tom is a dear friend who's become very important to me." "Just a friend?" Claire pressed gently. "It's complicated." "At our age," I demurred, "we enjoy each other's company. We share interests and values. Neither of us feels the need to define it beyond that." Claire smiled. "Sounds like more than friendship to me, but I won't push. I'm just glad you have someone who cares about you in your life." "Speaking of which," I said, seizing the opportunity to turn the conversation, "your mother mentioned you'd been through a difficult breakup yourself recently." It was Claire's turn to look away. "Yes. Jason and I were together for 3 years. I thought we were building toward something permanent." She sighed. "Turns out he didn't see it that way." "I'm sorry," I said simply. "The hardest part wasn't even the breakup itself," Claire continued. "It was realizing how much of myself I'd set aside to accommodate his life, his needs, his future. When he left, I didn't just lose a partner. I lost my sense of direction. That's part of why I wanted to visit, to remember who I am outside of that relationship." Her words resonated deeply with my own experience. "I understand that feeling more than you might think." Claire looked at me curiously. "Because of your stroke?" "Partly, but more because of what came after, realizing how much of my identity had become wrapped up in being Olivia's mother, in being needed. When that role changed, I had to rediscover who Martha Kennedy is when she's not defined by others' expectations. "And who is she?" Claire asked softly. I smiled, considering the question. "She's a gardener, a reader, a friend, someone who values authenticity and reciprocity in relationships. Someone who's learning that it's never too late to set boundaries or try new things." "I like her," Claire declared. "She sounds like someone worth getting to know better." The following evening, I invited Tom to join us for dinner. I'd mentioned him often enough that Claire was curious, and I wanted them to meet before her visit ended. Tom arrived promptly at 6, bearing a bouquet of dahlias from his garden and a homemade blackberry cobbler for dessert. His natural warmth and lack of pretension immediately put Claire at ease, and dinner conversation flowed effortlessly among the three of us. After the meal, Claire insisted on clearing up while Tom and I enjoyed coffee on the porch. When she joined us later, her expression was thoughtful. "So, Tom," she began, settling into a chair, "my mother tells me you're a retired physician who teaches gardening to seniors and drives my aunt to medical appointments. What she failed to mention is that you're also charming, make excellent cobbler, and look at Aunt Martha like she hung the moon." "Claire," I protested, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Tom chuckled, unruffled by her directness. "Your mother's assessment was accurate, if incomplete. And yes, I do think your aunt is rather remarkable." Claire nodded approvingly. "Good answer. Just so we're clear, Aunt Martha is very important to me, and I'd be extremely displeased if anyone hurt her." "Are you giving Tom the shovel talk?" I asked, torn between embarrassment and amusement. He's not a teenage boy picking me up for prom. "Age is irrelevant when it comes to protecting family," Claire replied with mock seriousness, though her eyes twinkled. "I understand completely," Tom assured her, "and I respect your concern for Martha's well-being. It's one of many things we have in common." Claire's interrogation soon gave way to more general conversation, but I found myself touched by her protective instinct. It had been a long time since anyone had looked out for my interests the way she was doing. Awkwardly, perhaps, but with genuine care. Later, after Tom had gone home with promises to return for a garden work session the following morning, Claire and I sat in the kitchen sharing a final cup of tea. "I like him," she declared. "He's solid, authentic." "I'm glad you approve," I said dryly. "Seriously, though," she continued, "seeing you with him, in this house, with your garden and your friends, you've created something beautiful here, Aunt Martha. Something genuine." Her words warmed me. "It's not what I expected for this chapter of my life," I admitted, "but yes, there is beauty in it. I've been thinking about what you said about rediscovering yourself after your caretaking role changed," Claire said thoughtfully. "That's exactly what I need to do now. Figure out who Claire is when she's not defined by her relationship with Jason." "And who do you think she might be?" I asked. Claire smiled. "I'm not entirely sure yet, but I have some ideas. She might be someone who finally writes that novel she's been thinking about for years. Someone who travels more. Someone who says yes to opportunities instead of worrying about how they fit into someone else's plan." "She sounds like someone I'd very much like to know," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. The remainder of Claire's visit passed too quickly. We established a comfortable routine, mornings in the garden with Tom often joining us, afternoons exploring different parts of Oakridge or neighboring towns, evenings filled with conversation, and quiet companionship. By the time she prepared to leave, I felt we had established a new, adult relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than merely family obligation. On her final morning, as she loaded her suitcase into the rental car, Claire turned to me with unexpected seriousness. "Thank you," she said, embracing me tightly. "Not just for the visit, but for showing me what courage looks like at any age." I blinked back sudden tears. I don't feel particularly courageous. But you are, she insisted. You faced heartbreaking betrayal from your own daughter, health challenges that would have defeated many people, and instead of becoming bitter or shutting down, you've created this beautiful new life. You're my role model, Aunt Martha. Her words touched me deeply. Come back soon, I managed through the emotion tightening my throat. Count on it, she promised. And maybe next time, you'll visit me in Arizona. Bring Tom. I'll show you both. The desert in bloom. It's something everyone should see at least once. After Claire's departure, the house felt momentarily empty, but not in the hollow way it had after Olivia moved out or after Daniel died. This was a gentler emptiness, one filled with pleasant memories and the knowledge that meaningful connection remained despite physical distance. 2 days later, I received a text message from Olivia. Coffee next week? Tuesday at 10? Old Mill Cafe? I responded with a simple, I'll be there, my heart both hopeful and guarded. When Tuesday arrived, I dressed with deliberate care, a casual outfit that conveyed neither special effort nor indifference. Tom offered to drive me, but I decided to go alone, wanting to face this reunion on my own terms. Olivia was already seated when I arrived, her appearance both familiar and changed. She seemed to have lost weight, and her typically polished style was more subdued. She stood when she saw me, her movement hesitant. Mom, she said softly. Hello, Olivia. I stepped forward, and after a moment's awkward pause, we embraced briefly before sitting down. Thank you for coming, she began. I wasn't sure you would. Of course I came, I replied. You're my daughter. The server took our orders, chamomile tea for me, black coffee for Olivia, and then we were alone with the weight of all that remained unspoken between us. How have you been? I asked, wanting to ease into the more difficult conversation. Honestly, pretty awful. She managed a rueful smile. The divorce proceedings are underway. I'm moving out of the house next month. Too many memories, too much space for just me. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said sincerely. She nodded acknowledgement. The thing is, as painful as it's been, Ryan's betrayal forced me to confront a lot of uncomfortable truths. About him, about our marriage, about myself. She hesitated. About how I've treated you. I remained silent, allowing her the space to continue. I've been selfish, Mom. Entitled, taking advantage of your generosity while giving very little in return. She met my eyes directly. I'm ashamed of what Ryan and I did, taking your money under false pretenses, abandoning you, when you needed help after your stroke. There's no excuse for it. No, I agreed quietly. There isn't. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. But I want you to know that I'm committed to making amends. Not just the financial repayment, but rebuilding trust if you're willing to give me that chance. I considered her words carefully, searching for the right response, one that neither dismissed the hurt she had caused nor closed the door to reconciliation. Rebuilding trust takes time, I said finally, and consistency. I value our relationship, Olivia, but I need to protect myself too. I understand, she nodded. I'm in therapy now, working through some of these patterns. The therapist suggested we might eventually consider some joint sessions if you were open to it. The suggestion surprised me. I'd consider that, yes. Our conversation continued, carefully navigating the boundaries between acknowledging past wounds and cautious steps toward healing. We didn't resolve everything in that one meeting. How could we? But we established a tentative framework for moving forward. Small steps, gradual rebuilding, realistic expectations on both sides. As we prepared to leave, Olivia hesitated, then asked, The garden club Mom mentioned, do you think they'd mind if I visited sometime? I'd like to see what you've been working on. The request touched me unexpectedly. I think they'd welcome you. Eleanor is always looking for new recruits. Eleanor sounds formidable from your descriptions. Olivia smiled. She is, I confirmed. But in the best possible way. We parted with another brief embrace, this one less awkward than the first. I watched Olivia walk to her car, her shoulders straighter than when I'd arrived, carrying what seemed like a lighter burden. I didn't call Tom immediately after the meeting, choosing instead to walk home through Riverside Park, giving myself time to process the conversation. The community garden was quiet in the late morning sun, just a few dedicated gardeners tending their plots. Eleanor waved from her section, and I detoured to join her. "Productive morning?" she asked, noting my thoughtful expression. "I met with Olivia for coffee," I explained. "First time since the mediation." Eleanor nodded, continuing to deadhead. Marigolds as she listened. "And how did that go?" "Better than I expected. She's going through a difficult time, separating from Ryan, but it seems to have prompted some genuine self-reflection." "Pain often does," Eleanor observed. "Not always, mind you. Some people just get bitter, but others find clarity they couldn't see before." "She mentioned wanting to visit the garden sometime," I added. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "Well, now that's something. Small steps toward common ground. Literally in this case." She straightened, stretching her back. "We'll welcome her if she comes. No pressure, no expectations. Just a place to start fresh if she wants it." That evening, Tom came for dinner, bringing fresh vegetables from his garden to complement mine. As we prepared the meal together, I recounted my meeting with Olivia. "You seem cautiously optimistic," he observed. "I am," I acknowledged. "But also realistic. One conversation doesn't erase years of patterns. We both have work to do." "The important thing is that you're both willing to try," Tom said, his hand briefly covering mine on the countertop. "That's more than many people manage." As summer transitioned to fall, my life continued its pleasant rhythms. Olivia and I met for coffee every other week, gradually rebuilding a relationship that, while different from before, held its own authenticity. She visited the community garden once, somewhat awkwardly at first, but warming to Eleanor's direct manner and practical approach. We didn't discuss finances beyond her confirmation that the monthly payments were continuing as agreed. Claire called regularly, updating me on her progress with the novel she'd begun during her visit. Tom and I planned a trip to Arizona in February, to see the desert in bloom, just as Claire had suggested. My garden yielded a bountiful harvest, much of which I preserved for winter, canning tomatoes, freezing beans, drying herbs with techniques Eleanor taught me. On a crisp October evening exactly 6 months after my stroke, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Rusty dozed at my feet, his breathing the deep, contented sighs of elderly contentment. Tom sat beside me, our shoulders touching comfortably as we shared the peaceful moment. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, echoing his familiar phrase. I smiled, considering how to express the fullness in my heart. "I was thinking about unexpected gifts," I said finally. "How sometimes what looks like disaster, a stroke, a betrayal, can actually be the beginning of something precious." "Like a garden after winter," Tom suggested. "Exactly like that." I turned to face him more directly. When I gave Olivia my retirement savings, I thought I was securing our future relationship. I never imagined it would eventually lead to this moment. Sitting here with you, with a garden I love, with new friends, and a different relationship with my daughter. "Life rarely follows the paths we expect," Tom agreed. "That's what makes it interesting." "Interesting," I echoed with a smile. "That's one way to put it." As twilight deepened around us, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for this unexpected chapter of my life. The road had been painful at times, requiring me to face difficult truths and establish boundaries I'd long avoided. But it had also led to genuine connections, newfound strength, and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. The financial betrayal that had initially seemed like an ending had become, instead, a beginning, the catalyst for reclaiming my life, my independence, and ultimately, my joy. Not despite the challenges, but because of them, I had found my way to this peaceful moment, surrounded by beauty I had helped create, beside a person who valued me exactly as I was. It wasn't the retirement I had planned. It was better. As autumn deepened in Oakridge, bringing russet and gold to the trees and a crisp edge to the morning air, my life settled into a rhythm that felt both new and somehow timeless. The late bloomers shifted focus from harvesting to winterizing the community garden, laying down mulch and planting cover crops to nourish the soil through the cold months ahead. Eleanor, ever the teacher, showed us how to save seeds from our most successful plants for next year's growing season. Good gardeners think in cycles, not endpoints, she declared, as we carefully labeled tiny envelopes filled with tomato and pepper seeds. Every ending nurtures the next beginning. Her words resonated beyond gardening, reflecting the cycle of change in my own life. What had seemed like endpoints, Daniel's death, my stroke, the rupture with Olivia, had all, in their way, nurtured new beginnings I couldn't have imagined. Tom and I established comfortable routines that honored both our connection and our independence. We shared dinner 3 or 4 evenings a week, alternating between our homes. Sunday mornings were reserved for long walks with Rusty at Riverside Park, followed by brunch at the Old Mill Cafe. We attended community events together, the Fall Harvest Festival, concerts at the local theater, lecture series at the library. Yet we maintained separate interests too, ensuring our relationship enhanced rather than consumed our individual lives. In late October, Maggie organized a surprise birthday gathering for me at her home. I arrived expecting a simple dinner with her and Tom, only to find my living room filled with people who had become important parts of my new life. Eleanor and the other late bloomers, members of my library reading group, neighbors who had helped during my recovery, and most surprisingly, Olivia. She stood slightly apart from the others, clearly uncertain of her welcome in this gathering of people who had stepped in when she had stepped away. When our eyes met across the room, she offered a tentative smile. "Happy birthday, Mom," she said, approaching with a carefully wrapped package. "I hope it's okay that I came. Maggie invited me, but I can leave if it makes things uncomfortable." "I'm glad you're here," I assured her, meaning it despite the complexity of emotions her presence evoked. "Thank you for coming." The party flowed around us, food and wine, laughter and conversation, no formal agenda beyond the pleasure of shared company. I watched Olivia gradually relax as the evening progressed, especially after Eleanor engaged her in a spirited debate about organic gardening practices versus conventional methods. "Your daughter has strong opinions," Eleanor commented to me later, her tone approving. "Misguided on the subject of synthetic fertilizers, but at least she's passionate. That's something to work with." I laughed. "High praise coming from you." "Well, she's making an effort," Eleanor shrugged. "That counts for something in my book." Later, as guests began to depart, Olivia helped Maggie and Tom clear away plates and glasses. The domestic gesture, so simple yet so meaningful given our history, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Tom noticed, coming to stand beside me with a gentle hand on my shoulder. "All right?" he asked quietly. "More than all right," I assured him. "Just taking it all in." When only Tom, Maggie, and Olivia remained, we settled in the living room with final cups of tea. The conversation meandered comfortably until Olivia broached a subject that surprised me. "Mom, I've been thinking about the holidays," she began. "They're coming up soon, and I was wondering—" She hesitated, glancing at Tom and Maggie as if uncertain about discussing this in their presence. Go on, I encouraged. I know things are still evolving between us, she continued carefully. But I'd like to spend Thanksgiving with you. If you're open to it. Nothing elaborate, just the two of us. Or, she glanced at Tom. You're welcome too, of course. The invitation touched me deeply. Holiday celebrations had become increasingly strained in recent years, with Olivia and Ryan often choosing to travel or spend time with his family instead. That she now wanted to intentionally share this time felt significant. I'd like that. Very much, I replied. And yes, I think just the two of us would be good for this first holiday. A chance to create some new traditions. Tom nodded his understanding, squeezing my hand supportively. Maggie and I were already planning a friend's Thanksgiving on the Friday after, he added. So we'll all celebrate together that way too. Olivia seemed relieved. Perfect. I'll bring the pies. My baking has improved since the divorce. Turns out it's good therapy. After they had all gone, I sat alone in my living room surrounded by birthday cards and the lingering warmth of celebration. 69 years old. Not where I had expected to be at this age, but exactly where I needed to be. November brought early frosts that transformed my garden into a tapestry of crystalline beauty each morning. Tom and I spent a weekend winterizing my home, checking weather stripping, cleaning gutters, wrapping outdoor pipes. The work was satisfying in its practicality, another form of self-care I had often neglected in the past. The attic insulation could use reinforcement before winter sets in fully, Tom observed as we finished the weekend's tasks. I have a friend who does excellent work at reasonable rates. Always thinking ahead, I smiled. That's one of the things I appreciate about you. Occupational habit, he replied. Physicians are trained to be preventative as well as reactive. Well, I appreciate both qualities, I said. Your foresight and your ability to respond effectively when the unexpected happens. Like when a stubborn English teacher refuses to ask for help after a stroke. He teased gently. Exactly like that, I acknowledged. Though I prefer to think of it as independent rather than stubborn. Tom laughed. A distinction without a difference, perhaps. Thanksgiving with Olivia proved both easier and more complex than I had anticipated. She arrived early to help prepare the meal, bringing not only the promised pies, but also a photo album I hadn't seen in years. I found this when I was packing to move, she explained as we worked side by side. In the kitchen. It has all those summer vacation photos from when I was little. Remember how Dad used to insist on stopping at every historical marker on road trips? The memory made me smile. He believed strongly in educational vacations. I think he was genuinely disappointed when you preferred the motel swimming pool to the pioneer museums. We fell into reminiscing as we cooked, navigating carefully around more recent history while finding common ground in shared memories of earlier, happier times. When we finally sat down to our modest but beautiful meal, Olivia raised her water, glass in a toast. To new beginnings, she said simply, and to learning from endings, I added. The meal wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, subjects we carefully avoided, wounds still tender to the touch. But there was also genuine laughter, honest conversation about her new apartment and job challenges, and a tentative bridge being rebuilt between us. After dinner, as we settled in the living room with slices of her excellent pumpkin pie, Olivia broached a subject I hadn't expected. I had a long talk with Claire last week, she said. She called to check on me, which was unexpected, but nice. Claire called you? This was news to me. Olivia nodded. Apparently you made quite an impression during her visit. She said you taught her a lot about resilience and rebuilding. She set down her dessert plate. She also gave me a much-needed perspective check about how I've treated you. I wasn't sure how to respond. Claire had never mentioned contacting Olivia during our regular calls. She didn't tell me to guilt you, I assured her. That's not Claire's style. No, but she was refreshingly direct. Olivia's smile was rueful. Said she couldn't understand how anyone could take advantage of Aunt Martha because you're literally the kindest person ever. Made me see myself through someone else's eyes, which was illuminating. The conversation shifted to plans. For the coming months, Olivia's new job opportunity, my upcoming trip to Arizona with Tom, the continued payments according to our legal agreement. As she prepared to leave, Olivia paused at the door. Today was good, she said. Different, but good. Yes, I agreed. A new tradition worth continuing. The friends' Thanksgiving at Maggie's the following day provided a joyful counterpoint to the more emotionally complex celebration with Olivia. Eleanor brought her famous cranberry chutney. Tom contributed an elaborate vegetable tart, and other guests arrived with dishes representing diverse culinary traditions. This is what retirement should be, Maggie declared as we all crowded around her dining table. Good food, good friends, no corporate gift exchanges or obligatory office parties. Here, here, Eleanor raised her wine glass. To chosen family. To chosen family, we echoed. Later, as Tom drove me home through streets already decorated for Christmas, I reflected on the concept of chosen family. For so long, I had defined family narrowly: Olivia, Daniel, occasionally extended relatives at holiday gatherings. Now my circle had expanded to include people connected by affinity rather than blood, people who chose to be in my life and whom I chose in return. Penny, for your thoughts? Tom asked, noticing my contemplative silence. I was thinking about family, I replied, how the definition expands when you open yourself to new possibilities. He nodded, understanding as always. One of life's great gifts, the family we create beyond the one we're born into. As December arrived, bringing holiday bustle to Oakridge, I found myself embracing the season with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in years. Tom and I visited local craft fairs, selecting handmade ornaments and gifts for friends. I joined the late bloomers in creating evergreen wreaths from garden materials, learning how to weave grapevines into circular forms and attach pine boughs, hollyberries, and dried flowers. Olivia invited me to her new apartment for coffee, a modest but charming space where she was clearly establishing her independent identity. Photos of her childhood and college years mixed with new artwork and books reflecting evolving interests. I noticed a small potted herb garden on her kitchen windowsill, basil, thyme, and mint in colorful ceramic containers. Eleanor suggested, starting small, she explained when she caught me looking at the plants. Said everyone should grow at least enough to season their own food. She's usually right about these things, I replied, pleased by this tangible connection between my daughter and my new friends. The winter solstice brought the late bloomers together for their annual celebration, a potluck dinner at Eleanor's home, followed by the ceremonial planting of paper-white narcissus bulbs in small glass containers. We plant these on the longest night, Eleanor explained to Tom, who had accompanied me to the gathering. They bloom in about 6 weeks, right when winter feels endless. Reminds us that growth continues even when we can't see it. I took my bulbs home, placing them on my kitchen windowsill where the emerging green shoots would be visible during morning tea. The symbolism resonated deeply, new life emerging from dormancy, beauty developing in its own time, patience rewarded, with unexpected blooms. As the year drew to a close, I found myself at a New Year's Eve gathering at the community center, a casual affair organized by the town's parks department with music, refreshments, and a countdown timed to accommodate those who preferred not to stay until midnight. Tom and I danced to classic songs performed by a local band of retired musicians, my body moving with a freedom and confidence I hadn't felt in decades. You're a wonderful dancer, Tom said, as we swayed to a gentle rendition of What a Wonderful... Well, Daniel had 2 left feet, I confessed with a smile. We hardly ever danced. Then we have some catching up to do, he replied, spinning me in a graceful turn that made me laugh with delight. As midnight approached, the band invited everyone to join in the countdown. Tom and I stood among friends, new and old, glasses of sparkling cider raised in anticipation. When the clock struck 12, he leaned down and kissed me gently, our first kiss, surprisingly, after months of growing closeness. "Happy New Year, Martha," he whispered. "Happy New Year, Tom," I replied, my heart full with the simple joy of the moment. Outside, snow had begun to fall, dusting the world with fresh possibility. Another year, another beginning, another opportunity to grow and flourish regardless of age or circumstance. The journey that had begun with loss and betrayal had led me here, to this moment of quiet celebration, surrounded by genuine connection, filled with gratitude for lessons learned and wisdom hard won. The snow continued to fall as Tom drove me home, transforming the familiar streets of Oakridge into something magical and new. We rode in comfortable silence, my hand in his, no need for words to fill the peaceful moment. At my door, he kissed me once more before saying goodnight. "I'm looking forward to our Arizona trip in February," he said. "New landscapes to explore together." "New beginnings," I agreed, echoing Olivia's Thanksgiving toast. "And learning from endings." As I stood on my porch watching his taillights disappear down the snowy street, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The financial betrayal that had once seemed like the end of my world had ultimately been the catalyst for its renewal. The daughter who had called me a burden had begun her own journey toward understanding and amends. The stroke that threatened my independence had led me to connections that enriched rather than diminished my autonomy. Life never follows a straight path. It meanders, doubles back, takes unexpected turns. The key, I had learned, was to remain open to possibility, to nurture what nourishes you, and to recognize that every ending, even the painful ones, contains the seeds of new growth, waiting patiently for their season to bloom. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.